gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from new heights with Jason and Travis Kelce, with the help of our special guest, content marketing manager of Varonis, Lexi. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ian. Thanks for having me today.
Wonderful to have you. I hope my intro didn't make people think that we actually had Jason and Travis on today, but knowing that it's a B2B marketing podcast, it's more important to have you on the show. Jason and Kelce really couldn't tell us that much, for being honest.
Yes, I agree. I think they would fully endorse having a true marketer here to talk about the marketing genius that goes on with their show.
Yeah, we're going to talk about New Heights. We're going to talk about Varonis. We're going to talk about content marketing, as always. But first, why the heck did you pick New Heights, Lexi?
Yeah, so I myself am actually a football fan. I feel like I can't go anymore and talk about New Heights without clarifying that I root for the Buffalo Bills, so go Bills, go Josh Allen. But I was kind of blown away when I first discovered the New Heights podcast, because I actually discovered them on social media through scrolling through Instagram. And as someone who watches football, I instantly recognized the brothers.
Did you ever find your Super Bowl ring? They never got to the end of that.
So we did find it.
Nice.
But then actually after we found it, I lost it again.
So it's back lost?
So here's what happens. A lot of times I hide it.
Jesus, Jason.
And I end up hiding
exactly
it for
what
myself.
You do. It's a Kelce thing to do. Yeah.
I know exactly what. Should I go get it right now?
Try and be...
Should I go get it?
No.
Yeah, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go get it. I'll be right back.
But their show really isn't about football. And it's about so many different things. And it kind of blew me away that these two brothers, these football players, were able to create such a distribution-focused show that really emphasized the people behind it rather than just the show and what it was doing and what they were trying to promote. So I couldn't help, I glean a lot of inspiration from them. And when I was sitting there trying to think of what would I say is remarkable, I definitely think what New Heights is doing is setting the stage for how content marketing distribution is evolving.
I love it. We're going to get all into that. But first, zooming out, tell us about your role at Varonis.
Yeah, so Varonis is a cybersecurity company. We sell a data security platform. It's an all-in-one SaaS platform that protects your data where it lives. And in today's environment, your data literally lives everywhere. We have remote workforces. We have people who are traveling for work. And oftentimes, when you think of cybersecurity, you think of people trying to get in through endpoints and just trying to get access so they can get money. But really what they're after is your data, whether that's personal information, financial information, healthcare. They want your data for a multitude of reasons. And at Varonis, we protect that data because that's the most valuable asset. We've got so many different use cases between our platform. We're data security posture management. We have managed data detection and response. So we will literally watch your data and make sure that no threat actors, nobody's trying to breach it and take that and sell it on the internet for you. Because we want you to be safe and we want you to just be, going on about your day and your normal business functions without have to worry who's trying to take that away from you.
And what's the scope of your role as content marketing manager?
Yeah, so I sit under the demand generation team. That's where myself and my small but mighty team, there's a little group of us under the content marketing umbrella. And I oversee all of the distribution that is happening, especially when it's coming from that external brand voice of Varonis. So I like to refer to myself as the quarterback, actually, where, I've got my team, they're producing all of these wonderful assets, but we don't want it to just stop with them producing the assets. We want to make sure that our customers, the industry at large, is seeing that these wonderful things and is learning about cybersecurity and what they can do to protect their company themselves. So I want to pass the ball. I want to get that piece of content and I want to throw it over the finish line for a touchdown and have it truly make an impact in someone, whether they're looking to buy a cybersecurity solution or just learning how they can protect their data with more valuable information.
Are you dual threat like Josh? You run it into sometimes, just a little keeper, QB keeper?
Yeah. I will say, I started as a social media manager and someone that was definitely within the video content umbrella. With that came learning how to write. So I think, content marketers truly are just a powerhouse, a triple threat. They can do all of the things that lots of those star quarterbacks like Josh Allen can do, for sure.
Meredith, what the heck is New Heights?
So I'm going to slightly sidestep your question to start.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
And instead of talking about New Heights, which is a podcast with brothers Travis and Jason Kelce, and talking about the NFL, let's talk about Taylor Swift for a second, because I have a hot take. And that's, I think New Heights wouldn't be as popular if Travis Kelce wasn't dating Taylor Swift. But wait, there's research to back me up. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift went public in October of 2023 with their relationship. And in a December 6th article of that year from Edison Research, they said New Heights podcast had a 4.5 times increase in weekly listenership over the previous 2 months, which is massive. And that was specifically in people ages 13 and older, and their female listeners increased by 18%. So I stand by my hot take. But to get back to New Heights, it's a podcast of these NFL players and brothers, Travis and Jason Kelce, like I mentioned.
You celebrated my touchdown by taking off your shirt, screaming, jumping out of the suite, chugging a beer with the fans, then jumping back into the suite. I watched this and it was pure pandemonium. There was not enough cameras on the suite where you could see Kylie, though. I wanted to see her reaction to all of this so bad.
I'm not gonna lie, I gave Kylie a heads up. The moment we got into the suite, I said, I'm taking my shirt off and I'm jumping out of that suite. And she said, Jason, don't you dare. I was like, hey, just letting you know what's happening. I'm not asking for permission. I'm doing this.
And so to get into how it was made, I assumed they were just let's start a podcast. Wouldn't that be fun? But that's not really how it happened. The idea was actually brought to them in 2016 by this former NFL producer. He does the digital media side for the NFL. Tund Saint Matthew Daniel. St. Matthew Daniel said, it's the perfect two-hander. It's a sitcom with two brothers. So that was kind of the idea. And it's interesting how he doesn't even mention NFL in that statement. I'm personally not a sports person, so the second I often hear NFL, I kind of glaze over. But the thing, Lexi, you mentioned is it's not necessarily just about football. You kind of just fall in love with their personalities and them as people.
What would you spend $1 million on if you had to?
Maybe a jetpack.
Jetpack's cool.
I'm in on jetpacks.
Can you get a golf course with $1 million? Is that kind of real estate?
Yeah, I think that's really cheap for a golf course.
You buy a really nice piece of art or maybe some sports memorabilia, like a Hodis Wagner card or something like that.
Maybe a few watches. Watches seem to appreciate, yeah.
And that for me, listening to podcasts sort of overrides any sort of topic. If I love the person talking, I'm going to love the podcast. And the Kelce brothers are so charming and they could literally talk about anything, and their camaraderie and their banter is really sort of what carries the show. But Jason is the older brother. Right now he's 36. He's married, has kids. He's sort of the wiser, knowing older brother. He sort of plays that. And Travis who's 34, is younger. He's the one dating Taylor Swift. He's playful, and they're both just funny and talk about anything and everything, parenthood and things like that.
How long, if at all, would you allow me to babysit the girls unsupervised?
I think my headphones just cut out.
Longer than Jason? You're not hurting my feelings.
Would it be by yourself?
Unsupervised.
But then who's watching you?
By the way, Jason plays for the Eagles and Travis plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. But anyway, all that said, for whatever reason, in 2016, the podcast just never happened. And it didn't happen until about 2022. And that's when St. Matthew Daniel, who's now Senior Vice President of Original Content at Wave Sports and Entertainment, which is a mouthful. But anyway, now basically he's got his own media company. He came back to the brothers in the summer of 2022, and then it premiered in September of that year. So it comes to fruition. And the whole goal, Travis told Forbes, was that we saw an open space to bring our unique point of view to a wider audience with the intention of sharing our authentic take on the NFL and the culture around it. And the title is a reference to having grown up in Cleveland Heights and also reaching new heights in multimedia entertainment and putting content out on new channels. So they're sort of like accessing other channels other than just TV and their games. But now New Heights has 2.4 million subscribers on YouTube. It's number 2 on Apple Podcasts for football podcasts in the US. And on Spotify, it's number 1 for the same football podcasts in the US. So it's super, super popular. And I know I talked about Taylor Swift and sort of jokingly, but the success of the podcast also depends on I think this super close relationship between the brothers. They're just they've both got the gift of gab, right? They're conversationalists. They talk about all sorts of stuff, not just football, but not just parenting, whatever is trending and things like that. And that combined with the popularity of football, now Taylor Swift, right? They really, I think, have something, but also they're cutting up their content into chunks, putting it on social media.
If your football positions were switched, who would be better in their role? This is a no-brainer.
I would easily be able to hold my own.
Travis, you would get destroyed if you tried to line up and play center.
I would have to gain some weight. What are you right now?
292.
Muscle does weigh more than fat.
And Lexi, like you, I first saw something about it on Instagram, I think. And it was just them chatting, and you can tell they're just so funny and they have so much fun together. And I think that's kind of what drew me to it. So I'm wondering, Lexi, what has stuck with you, from the podcast that you really love?
Yeah, I agree. I think that last point that you just mentioned of the way that you kind of found them was on Instagram, and it was this cut up content that very quickly you could see that the relationship that they have. I myself have 2 boys at home, and I watch those videos and I'm like, oh, this is how I want my sons to be when they grow up, right? They have such a connection. They love each other. They know exactly what to say to get the other person riled up. And that's what kind of gets me invested in watching more. And I think part of that also ties to that they post the stuff on the different channels you mentioned. They have a really successful YouTube page. Their podcasts are performing well. And I'd say even their TikToks and Instagram probably have a large amount of following. And I think it's because they repurpose their content to fit the channel that they're posting it on.
Why? Can you come down? Come here, girly. Come on. All right, I need you to say something right into this microphone. Okay? You got to hit it with
New news!
Yay! Who's that?
Uncle Travis.
Yeah, Uncle Travis.
Hey, baby, why?
So when I come across it on Instagram, I see these really visual captions. Sometimes they even have emojis that slam down in it. When Travis is talking, it's yellow, which is a Chiefs color. When Jason's talking, it's a green color, which is kind of the Eagles color. But if I were to go watch that same clip on YouTube in the full podcast, right, which was probably around an hour long, it doesn't look like that, because in a podcast, it's very audio based. Some people that watch it on video, you see the setup, you see what their environment looks like as you're watching it. And so I think they really nailed it on the head in order to get the message on the platform and have it consumable where people are at. I myself, I've listened to a couple of the full length shows, and I like football, but I don't like football that much, so where they dive into some of the things, I don't follow them there. I'm not subscribed on YouTube or Spotify, but I am subscribed on Instagram, because that's where I've really found to consume the content in the most beneficial way for me, the way that I prefer. And that's why I think it's remarkable, because I really think in marketing, there's been this perception that you have to be everywhere because, if you're not everywhere, nobody's going to find you. And yes, you really should be in these places, but don't just be there to be there. Be purposeful. Make sure that you're not posting QR codes on social media that nobody's going to be able to access, right? Or a text document that nobody's going to read. Make your content work for that channel. And you're actually going to gain a lot more interest and brand awareness by doing it right than just being there in general. Definitely my number one takeaway from the New Heights squad, what they've done with it.
I love all that, Lexi. That's great. And I completely agree. I'd also like to take a step back and say, this show shouldn't have worked. And here's my reasoning why. If you were to look at the most popular players in the NFL year in and year out, all the people who grace the the talk shows and get all the plaudits and punditry. I need another P. It's not centers and tight ends. Now, there have been actually a few pretty impactful tight ends. So Tony Gonzalez is great on TV. Gronk is obviously Gronk. Mike Ditka, formerly tight end, going way back. I know Meredith. You're like, I don't know who. But that's all right. He's old school, very old school on the Chicago Bears, but he was a tight end. So there actually is a little bit of track record for tight ends, but not a lot. It's arguably one of the least important positions on the field, unless you have a superstar. And this is where, our guy Travis Kelce comes in. On the other side, the centers, offensive linemen get very little credit. Centers being often the most cerebral of the group of linemen. And, therefore it makes sense that that Jason, he's a pretty sharp guy. But again, historically not someone that you would build a media franchise around. There are definitely linemen over the years who have been very popular in media, but it's almost for the reason of who they are, right? If you think of, the big linemen, they're big, they're larger than life. They're oftentimes like a bit, I pick up heavy thing and I hit thing and it go far sort of people, very knuckle dragging types, not cerebral, intellectual. That's sort of left for the quarterbacks, most of the people there. Wide receivers usually are sort of a bit more of the prima donna and very out there. And, and then running backs were sort of the staple of the NFL for the offense, which is the most fun part for a lot of people. And so you sort of have this thing of like a tight end and an offensive lineman making a podcast together is objectively not going to get greenlit by a studio, right? And it didn't. It didn't get greenlit by a studio in a way, right? They had to make it themselves. Now, so that's the case for like why this wouldn't work. Lexi, any thoughts there? I mean, I feel like as a football fan, I'd imagine you're probably on the same page there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think when people think about like their favorite players, it very often is not the tight end or the center. It's those star players but I think like you said, there's kind of a lesson that it doesn't always have to be that first person. Not New Heights, but it really makes me think of the Disney movie Encanto too, where like when they first came out with that, they like put all this funding in, merch around Isabella, and I'm forgetting her sister's name, but that was like the specialized in flowers and stuff. And then when the movie came out, everyone really gravitated towards the strong sister. Like that's who it was representative of. And so, yeah, I think like there's definitely a case where sometimes things shouldn't get greenlit because it doesn't check that box of, the wider umbrella of what everyone is doing. But when you like narrow it down to the specific things that make that person relatable and you catch on to those, you can really magnify it and juice that orange for all that you can get.
Yeah. And I think that it's interesting that it took a producer to look at this and go, oh, it's two brothers. That's really unique. And I think that is the thing that makes them so unique is they're these big, burly guys that, hit a bunch of people for many years. And that the juxtaposition of like, hey, they're brothers. They act like brothers. They get in fights. They, pick on each other, but they're also very warm and loving. And you get to see this other side of these two people is, I think, really enticing. And I think we're always infatuated by sports families. I think that's like one of the things in sports, like father, son, brothers who play. And then that culminates in, well, what if they're in the same game together? And so with the Kelces, what you had a very interesting thing was Travis has been one of the best tight ends in the NFL for basically a decade. He's been on the most important team and the best team, the Chiefs, for a decade. He's been the number one like fantasy tight end for everyone who plays fantasy football, again, for years and years. And he's won a couple Super Bowls. Jason was on the Eagles, also won one Super Bowl, or did he win two? No, he went to two. He won one. Right. Yeah. And what happened, they end up playing each other in the Super Bowl, right?
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's two brothers playing in the Super Bowl, and it's Jason and Travis Kelce.
If the world hasn't force-fed you this shit already.
We're officially the first brothers to play in a Super Bowl against one another.
So I think that we got a lot of media from the broader media of this narrative, kind of shoving it down our throat a little bit about like, oh, the mom, they showed a lot of shots of the mom and the like, whose jersey am I going to wear today? And all this sort of stuff. And so we got a lot of that. Like, and when you think about it in marketing terms, like that's earned media, right? Like that's millions and millions and millions of impressions on these two people. And when you lead up to a Super Bowl, there's only so many people on the field. There's only so many people you can talk to. And with Jason being one of the best centers in the league and this really good Eagles team that, upset one of the biggest upsets ever. They beat the Patriots with a backup quarterback in the Super Bowl. So you have this really good football story with them too. And then they eventually meet in the Super Bowl, which is really cool. And that gets like all this additional press. So like we were familiar with them, even though most centers and tight ends you're not actually familiar with. And then you say, okay, well, let's get them in a room and can they do it? And then of course they absolutely can.
Losing's important.
That's what we're getting to.
You got to lose to know how much it sucks.
And don't be sore losers, kids.
If you never get your kicked, you're never going to learn. Embrace it, kids, but hate it.
And then once you get to that point, they can make good content together. Then you back up what I like to call sort of like the machine of, okay, we're going to create a really good show with good cuts, with high quality, with all these clips created for the devices that it's meant to be, like you said, Lexi. And then all of a sudden you have a hit, which I'd say like unequivocally was a hit, Meredith, before Taylor. No, I'm kidding. But then you add on,
right?
Yeah. Yeah, right. And then you add on like one of the biggest celebrities of our generation and add it on to this guy who, and again, this is a long soliloquy, but again, like Travis is like, he's funny. He's always kind of been antics. He talks a lot of smack to other people. He's an out there sort of dude anyways, a little bit of a wild card. And then now all of a sudden he's dating Taylor Swift. And it's like this culmination of events of like, we knew who they were as sports fans. We knew the story. They have a show that can capitalize on it.
We got to talk about it.
Yeah. My personal life, that's not so personal.
Yeah, well.
I did this to myself, Jason. I know this.
Well, Trav, how's it feel that Taylor Swift has finally put you on the map?
And then serendipity strikes. And all of a sudden, or some people don't think it's serendipity, but we believe that it's serendipity because we believe in the power of love on this podcast. And then all of a sudden, lightning strikes and then you have a mega hit. And now they're not going anywhere. You know what I mean? Like the sky is the limit for them. And, took advantage of all that stuff. And I think there's a million marketing lessons in there, and I'll stop talking. But I think that like this would not have got greenlit. I guarantee you. Like it just wouldn't have, because it doesn't fit the profile of what you would think of for superstars. It just wouldn't. And yet here we are.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because kind of what we've alluded at is that now you can look at those people as superstars, right? And I think there's a lesson in there for marketers too, that, a lot of times, especially in content where you're like, I have this video I want to create, but I need someone to be on camera. Like you always kind of think of your CEO or, someone that's face, but maybe the subject matter expert or like the specialist on your team is really good at public speaking and actually has the time and the bandwidth to also be that person. And then you kind of can create that personality internally without thinking about it. So I definitely agree. Like it shouldn't have been greenlit, but I'm happy that it did because I think it's really opened the doors of the types of personalities that we're going to see where people are a lot more niche. They're a lot more relatable and it makes content a lot more consumable because of it.
Well, I think the lesson there is that it didn't get greenlit. They greenlit it themselves. You know what I mean? They decided
Don't take
to
no
do it
for an
themselves.
answer.
Right. But I think for them, a good marketing lesson is, as always, I talk about this a lot, fight where you can win, which is like, what can only you do that nobody else can do? And any player podcast, like athletes now that have a podcast, so like to All the Smoke or, to whatever it is, usually you're taking two people who played with each other who are probably both pretty interesting on their own and you jam it together and it ends up being usually pretty good content. You get the behind the scenes stories, all that stuff. With the Kelces, they're brothers.
One major little goof on the ring. Miami is listed as the 7 seed. Miami was actually the 6 seed. Are you going to get it fixed?
I don't give a
Does anybody care?
I like that we didn't give a about what seed Miami was in.
And it's super rare. I mean, I don't know how many pairs of brothers there are in the league, but like maybe 20 max, something like that. And then you have to say also elite level players who also won Super Bowls and who were still playing, right? That's also very hard to build a media empire while you're still playing. Jason just retired, but that's super hard to do too. So you have to fit into it. This is why Draymond Green's podcast is really popular, because Draymond is very polarizing and he's doing it all well. He's like, he gets off the court, goes home and records the episode, so that is very novel. But as a lesson for marketers, they're doing something that only they can do. And it's like when they talk about stuff that's familial, it's only something that only they can talk about. Like nobody else can have that sort of talk track, right? And if you compare this to, let's say, Shannon Sharp's Club Shay, which is extremely popular. Shannon Sharp was very popular, also tight end, funny enough, was very popular in the league. Very outspoken, very over the top, which is why he went into this career in media and has been on Undisputed and all that other stuff. But it's like, he's a hot take artist at this point in his career, right? That is his goal, is to spin the flywheel of hot takes. Whereas like this show isn't that. It's not a hot take machine. It's kind of rejecting the premise that ESPN and Fox and these others are putting out there, which is that we need to debate every single thing to death, and making it a little bit more, again, familial. Other marketing takeaways.
So I think for me, another big selling point for why I kind of subscribed to New Heights, right? Like it's content that I want to keep consuming is because it's social first content. The editing style and the way that they go about it evolves with each episode. Like even though the template might be the same, like they kind of find a way to repurpose it and keep going without it just needing to tie to like, here's two brothers talking about football. One of the episodes recently that really caught my eye about like being social first was they are starting to have guest stars now. And at first it was like other football players, right? It's like Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback.
You and Travis are known for having quite the bromance, Pat.
The first time that I thought, I was like, me and Travis, we're going to be connected, was, you remember when we had the 4th preseason game, we used to have a little off time. I set 8 alarms on my phone. I go out with the rookies. I get out there and I see old Travis Kelce. Travis like, come on to the table.
Let's do this.
Let's have a great time. Get home. I have all my alarms set. I go to sleep, wake up, not to an alarm, look at the TV, and I see 8:15.
Oh.
Those stars that you're saying. Then they brought in Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Listen, my heart is pumping right now, because we have the king of pump in the building. He has grossed an estimated $4 billion at the box office. You know him from some of your favorite movies like Commando,
Hey-o.
Predator, True Lies, Kindergarten Cop, Jingle All the Way. It's the goddamn Terminator. That's right, we got Arnold Schwarzenegger. Woo!
Wow, that was fantastic. Let's go, baby.
And it was super interesting because I listened to that episode and they actually did still talk about sports, like, and yes, he is an athlete, like, but for most people, they're going to think of him as like the Governor movie star. And they definitely touch on that too. But at the same time, they were still able to weave in bodybuilding, and in such a way that, like, if you were to look at their first episode to that episode, really the thing that connects them is the two brothers, but they've evolved in such a way that they've made it work for the audience, to keep them entertained, to keep them interested without having to totally pivot away from football, which was kind of what drove them to producing the show in the first place.
I think that this show unequivocally would not be as popular without how good they are at the social clipping. I think they're really good at it. I think the design is really cool also. I think they do a great job with their design assets, which makes a difference. And I think in terms of consumption, I think there's tons of people who don't listen to podcasts, the entire thing, and just watch clips on social, and you get the gist of it, and you can talk about it with your friends.
When's the last time you actually looked? I've not looked at a playbook in years. You installed it 3 times a year your entire career.
You got to look over your work, you know?
You've had the same tight end coach, the same head coach. Like, you're not installing anything new.
Yes, we are.
And you're going to go over it in the meeting.
Every year, Andy Reid's got note cards that are like the little note cards.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can just watch, like there's a show that I don't watch and I just see the clips on social and I watch those every now and then. And you sort of like when it's something that, you know, is important enough or whatever. And like, that is really hard to do. Like, it's really hard to make clips that are good enough that are like that. It's like not an easy thing to do, especially if you're trying to make the show more intimate isn't the right word, but more, again, like familial. We sort of said that like 10 times, but to make it a little bit different. Whereas like, that's the opposite of the hot take machine, right? The hot take machine is you just turn the takes up as high as you can and as hot as you can so that you're like, you know, I don't think that whoever is a top 10 quarterback anymore, you know, or whatever. Whereas again, that's not really what they're doing. And so then you have to say, okay, well, what clips are going to succeed? And then it's kind of just like hanging out with the boys types clips, which turns out people really want to do that.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to show like how, you know, a lot of times in marketing, even with podcasts, New Heights is kind of an exception because they're not really selling you anything, right? Like merch and their relationship, and maybe to become a fan of one of their teams if you didn't already affiliate yourself with, you know, a different franchise. But they have this emphasis on building an audience and building that audience wherever it needs to be. And like, that's the goal, right? And I think that's where there's a lesson there in that, like, not everything has to fit into a box or, you know, be the way that you thought it would be to build an audience. Like, you just need to focus on delivering the content in the right way and being relatable, like, and having that like niche outlook, what's unique to you. How you said before, no one else can do what they're doing.
The Eagles are for sale.
What? Yeah.
Listen, I'll back out of the TVO right now if you tell me I can own the Philadelphia Eagles.
What?
You're going to tell me you're going to turn it down.
Yes.
You get an opportunity to be an owner of an NFL team. You're going to say no?
Yes.
Why?
Because I want to broadcast when I'm done playing.
You want to broadcast. You're saying that right now. You want to broadcast.
Yes.
What do you want to do?
Really foster that within everything that you do. And you're going to see some success come from that and the audience that comes with it. Because if you're not doing things for your audience, like whatever platform you're on, they're probably not going to stick around, right? So they found out, you know, they love these conversations with the boys and, oh no, we're running out of things to talk about. Let's bring another boy into the chat and let's keep it going. And then that builds their audience even more outside of that, which is great.
The dudes being dudes content is
yes,
having its
and I also
moment.
think, you know, dudes being dudes in a way that everyone can understand. Like we've said, Meredith, you're not a football fan, but you've still seen their show and you still like it. Like you don't have to just relate to one facet of what their brand is or their persona without being hooked. Like you're entertained by them, while at the same time you can be educated. Because even though I know a little bit about football, I'm by far, you know, I couldn't tell you what the different positions mean all the time and like who's a star fantasy player and what all the terms mean. But they've helped me by making their content entertaining. I'm also educated at the same time.
Lastly, in draft related news, it turns out is all these scouts are looking at, especially defensive line. There's something about a big that just like helps you really anchor.
It's just such a funny thing to even think about, though.
What do you think of when you think of an NFL player?
And that's where I think, you know, there's definitely lines when you want to go more into entertainment and more into education, but they do a great job of blending the two together consistently and no matter what type of format they're putting the message into.
It's just super authentic. And I think that it has always felt that way. And when you're authentic in this generation, this time and place, like, I think that works really well. I think the opposite of that, again, is First Take, which we're going to be talking about on the show in not too long. That's the opposite of authentic, right? Which is, I'm going to say the most ridiculous thing possible that I probably don't even believe, you know? And so I think that there's room in the market for both. But the final thing I'll say about this that really fascinates me about the player stuff, which is when they have retired from the league and they are no longer playing, like Pat McAfee is a great example of this, where Pat is just great. He's just very interesting. And people like him because he has a lot of energy and charisma and all that. As Meredith tells me, it's Riz. That's what the kids are calling him.
Yeah, I totally said that.
I know. But nobody really cared about him as a player too much, unfortunately, because he's a punter. Whereas people care about them as players. And so it is interesting to hear the behind the scenes, right? So when you remove that from them later on, how do they connect to that? Well, they can bring on athletes and guests and get that behind the scenes stuff. And then they can share stories and then we can reminisce and then it's nostalgia. But the show changes like significantly. The value to the listener changes significantly. 10 years from now, it'll be a very different show if they're still doing it, which I hope they are. And that's fascinating. And that's like one of the things that I think people like don't realize when they do make a series, and as a lesson for B2B marketers, is just because you start it some way doesn't mean it always has to be that exact thing. It can evolve as long as you sort of keep the core sort of tenets of it. If the point of it is like, an inside look at the game and these two brothers and their personality, and it's a fun time hanging with them, well, it's going to be a fun time hanging with them, whatever they're talking about. But you got to bring back that, hey, I also want some inside info on the NFL, what's going on today.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a little bit more of a taste of that route too, now with Jason being retired, right? Like he's really going to come in this next football season and be the cheerleader, which we've seen from different clips, of him busting out of windows and cheering on his brother. And we're going to get his hot takes, not being someone in this, having to represent his team a little bit more too. So I'm hooked. I'm subscribed. I'm ready. I'm ready to see what they do with it. And I definitely think they're going to evolve that series, like you're saying, and keep it going. We'll see if it's 10 years into their retirement, but I'm excited to see what they do nonetheless.
Travis and Taylor will have multiple kids at that point. It'll be Kardashians 2.0. That would honestly be the most wild thing.
We said it here first.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Okay, switching gears to Varonis. What's your content strategy? How do you think about it holistically?
Yeah, so our content strategy, I really look at distribution and repurposing and what I call the content engine. So we have, as an all-in-one data security platform, there's a lot we can do, but there's definitely some key things and messages that we want to make sure our audience and potential users of our product know that we do. We have this engine framework where we look at what those core pillars are, what our product is doing, how our product is evolving, and the key campaigns that we're going to be driving for a certain quarter, half, or year, and really determine what core content types we're going to create from that. Once those core content types are created, like let's say it's a webinar, then we'll put that into production for the cut content. Really repurposing everything from that one first big piece of content to then fuel our engine of what goes on our social media platforms, what goes on our blog, what's embedded in newsletters and emails sent to our sales team for employee advocacy. All of those things really stem from like that one big piece of content. And part of that is, to alleviate ourselves. There's a lot of companies out there that have small but mighty teams, but also to pick it up and make sure that the messaging stays consistent. Because I think a lot of times people get caught up in producing content that they produce, and you'll be writing on the same topic, but none of it kind of matches up the same. It all kind of falls flat, and then your market is kind of confused about what you're doing. So we repurpose a lot at Varonis when it comes to our content, just to make sure that messaging is consistent and also that it fits the channel that we're sharing it on, because we want to make sure that the investment that's going into a LinkedIn post is going to perform well on LinkedIn. Versus if it's something that's going in an email, that might look a little bit different. So that way our audience can consume all of the content in one place without having to hop to different channels.
What's working for your audience right now?
I think for our audience, it's a variety of mediums, and video content is definitely one that we've seen a lot of growth in. We've got some really amazing subject matter experts that really know how to make you think about the importance of data. And we're shining a light on them. We're making sure that what they're saying, that it's articulated, it's recorded, so then that we can share that to the masses. Because I wouldn't say written content is gone, right? Like there's definitely a lot of talk that, like the blog is dead. I don't think the blog is dead. It serves a different purpose. I think now video is really where it's at, because if you do it right, people can consume it in so many different ways, with no sound on, with sound on, Maybe it's that 1-minute clip. Maybe it's the hour-long podcast like we're talking about. But I think if you have that video recorded where there's sound and there's audio, and you put it in these distribution channels that people are gravitating to that medium in, you're going to find a lot of success with video for sure.
Yeah, I like to think of those social channels where, like, have you ever had where you only have like one bar of service and your phone won't show you the pictures or the videos, and you're scrolling on social media and you're like, I think I only consume the visuals. Like, I don't know if I actually read anything. Or it's like, you can't like catch your grasp on like what the different content is, or you see people that post like really bad stock imagery on a blog post. I'm like, that might be the best post ever. And I am not reading it because it's like the man standing in front of a sunset. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? But I think we should all be investing more in video without a doubt. Then you can work your way backward from there. It's just the harder thing to do, right? It's like the harder thing to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely, because for some companies, they think video and they think they need this big studio and all the fancy cameras and lights. And I mean, you can get there, but I'd say like start first just recording a conversation, like getting people on camera, finding out who's comfortable being in that position. And then you can, slowly build up your video strategy so it's something that's effective and easy to churn out. Because if you just kind of go into it blind, you're going to run into a lot of surprises that you're not expecting.
Yeah, to take a lesson from New Heights, it's like, to my point, that the Kelces had millions, hundreds of millions of impressions on them, from playing in the NFL so many times to fantasy football to Super Bowl appearances to in-depth stories and all that before they started the podcast. So if you're starting something with your team and they have 0 impressions, you got a bigger hill to climb. And so you got to figure out how you can create something that's different, that's unique. What is your version of two brothers who are still playing in the NFL, who happen to also play each other in the Super Bowl, who also happen to be, two very lovable, interesting, weird, quirky people behind the scenes, and they bring that authenticity, to their show as well. How do you find your version of that? And you, like we've talked about, you might have that sitting on your team, but it's better to be different than it is to try to make a great show off the bat.
I agree completely. You've got to, and the only way to know is to try. So if you're curious about it, like just start dabbling in it with a Zoom recorded video, talking about something, cut it up, see how it works, publish it if it makes sense. But even if it didn't, like you learned something about the process of creating good video content that you're then going to apply to every other video that you make. So the first step is just get started, just try.
Last piece of advice there. If you're making YouTube content, make it for YouTube. Do not try to make a video and then try to just throw it on YouTube. Doesn't work. Literally does not work. You can if you go see what is popular on YouTube, again, like everybody's like, how did Mr. Beast do it? And it's like, Mr. Beast focused on building a YouTube show for YouTube, right? He was not trying to build a LinkedIn, video and then put it on YouTube, That's like when repurposing goes wrong, you know what I mean? It's like that stuff doesn't work. If you're going to build a YouTube show,
yes,
build it for YouTube.
Yeah. My kind of motto with it is repurposing is not copy and paste. Like you have to repurpose it in a way where it's actually like something new and different. And in this case, different to fit the medium of YouTube itself. So you can't just copy and paste like your webinars completely over there. Like, with the reason you'll learn that people aren't consuming that content. So that's where you have to, get those ideas and try something new, mix it up. And like you said, make it work for YouTube.
Okay. Do you have a favorite piece of content that you've worked on in the past year or so?
The past year or so. I mean, that's really hard to narrow it down because I've been at Varonis for exactly a year specifically. But I think one of my favorite campaigns that we worked on was we in February of 2024 launched a new, it's kind of a rebrand, kind of a refresh, because there's definitely elements of what Varonis used to be still there, so that were recognizable. but it really modernized us as a cybersecurity company. And I definitely didn't do it alone. We have such an amazing design team that brought it to life and made it possible. But for me on content side, some people will look at rebrands as changing your profile photo on your channels, and that's about it. And go check out our new website because that got rebranded too. But we actually created a video where we sat down, we got really strategic before the rebrand came out. How can we best display the new colors? How can we really premiere our new symbol of data security, which for us was this really elite, clean looking robot that we call Protector 22814. Oh, let's give Protector 22814 a background. When and where should he come in? So there's a lot of strategy that went into it. And it so happened to be right after the Super Bowl too. So it kind of worked in that frame where we, on that Monday morning following the Super Bowl, here's one commercial that you missed. Here's the new Varonis. We're excited to meet you and keep protecting your data in the future and beyond. So that was definitely a fun one because with it, we've really rebranded a lot of our other materials to be more fit for the channels that they're being posted on, like carousels for LinkedIn, thumbnails for YouTube, email headers, advertisements. Now all of it is so elevated because of this rebrand campaign. And we really kicked it off by visually telling that story right off the bat with the video that the content team created for it.
Would you say that took your brand to new heights?
Completely. Yeah. I think we can very clearly see from when we rebranded to now, the growth that we've had, where before, and I say growth is audience building for us is really important. So we can see that, we are healthily getting new followers and subscribers on our channel just because we've elevated the look and feel to match the type of content that we were already putting out.
Why Protector 22814? Why that number?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Varonis is actually a public company, and that is the anniversary date, February 28th of 2014 of when we went public.
Love it. Amazing. How do you think about ROI?
Yeah, ROI is always a tricky thing, I think, for content marketers, because some of what we do, especially for my team and my role that I'm in now, it's a lot of dark funnel stuff. We're kind of focused on that 97% that isn't always ready to buy. So when they're not ready to buy, how can you calculate that ROI? But we found some creative ways to actually help make that content, return on investment in new ways. One of them is through employee advocacy. We really promote employees sharing our content natively to their own networks and channels and offer them the advice and strategic mindset of why we think that's important. Educating them hey, if you post that on LinkedIn, it's going to definitely get more visibility than our brand posting it for this reason and this reason. And we can clearly see that with webinar registrants. I can't tell you the last time I've signed up for a webinar on LinkedIn. For me, I just don't go to LinkedIn looking for webinars to attend. But now, because we have a stronger arm and attention to educating our employees about sharing the events that we're doing online, we're seeing an uptick in registrants directly coming from social because it's just said different. It's not as broadcasted from a brand page. It's personal.
What's coming up? Is something cool in the works?
Yeah, we've been coming out of a crazy busy event season. We just were at the RSA conference and it was a lot of fun in San Francisco. We learned a lot. And so we're gearing up for some of the conferences happening in the later half of the year. But I'm also excited, some industries, not all industries, slower in the summer is kind of a theme. So our marketing team's getting together in person and I'm excited for that, definitely.
Oh, fun. Very fun. Okay, final question. What is your best piece of advice for someone who is leading content?
My best piece of advice for someone leading content is just try. You have to experiment. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to be willing to try something and let it fail to see the success that it could offer. And this kind of is a great tie back to New Heights. And, we were talking that they tried and they didn't succeed at first. They got shot down. That wasn't going to happen. But they grew, they polished themselves, they became a little bit more relatable, they identified those niche things, and then they were able to really create a successful show. So I think a lot of times you put a lot of work into content or a campaign and it doesn't work. Like it doesn't give you the ROI or the kind of results that you were hoping for. But if you sit back and you take that as a lesson and you just see it more as a learning experiment, something that you did and tested out and learned from instead of a failure, you're definitely going to see a lot of growth in your creative strategy and how you're executing and adapting your content to fit your channels that you're posting it on.
Lexi, wonderful having you on the show. For our listeners, you can go check out Varonis.com. If you're worried about data breaches, Varonis stops data breaches automatically. Go check them out, Varonis.com. Lexi, any final thoughts? Anything else to plug or anything?
No final thoughts. You can find me on LinkedIn, I guess. Lexi Croisdale, as I said. I try to post there often. And then I think the only other last note I could say is go Bills.
There you go. Indeed. I love it. Awesome. Thanks, Lexi. Take care.
Thank you so much.
I'll be up in a second. We only got 2 ad reads left. All right, let's make these ad reads last as long as possible. Got hit with a shoe.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.